Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first Tea with Carolina in English. This is something that I've been doing for all of my French-speaking families for the last several months, and I thought that perhaps it would be fun to do for all of my English-speaking families as well. So here's how it works. Once a week, I meet you here on video, and I have my cup of tea, and you have your cup of tea, and we sit down together and we talk about something important. And generally speaking, that something important comes from you. Any question that you might have about your child, your program, any sort of play-based, home-based, help your child with autism or other challenges kind of question, that's what this is about. So welcome to our very first Tea with Carolina in English. Go get yourself a cup of tea, and I'm going to answer a question for you today. Today's question actually comes from one of my families in France, so I've translated it for you. And I thought it would be a really wonderful topic for us to start with this week, because several of the families, well, many families that I work with, when they're first beginning their programs at home, they have a lot of questions about how much time they should be spending in the playroom with their children, and feeling like maybe in that time they're not doing enough. So we're going to talk about those ideas today. So here's the question from Amélie, and she is in France. She says, "We have just completed our first session in the playroom the day before yesterday. 25 minutes 2 days ago, and then 40 minutes today." So I want to stop right there and say congratulations, Amélie. I'm so excited to hear that you've begun. What a wonderful start that you've already started spending time in the playroom. I think that's fantastic. "At the moment," she says, "we're trying things out and we're feeling good, but I sometimes feel tired. So, for example, yesterday I was laying down next to my son Pierre, who is 6, and we stayed there without doing anything for about 10 minutes. Is this okay? What rhythm should we be following for our playroom sessions? 1 hour each day or more? Also, Pierre has been accepted into a center for children with autism, but we aren't sure that it's really very beneficial for him. If he went there, he'd have to go full-time, which doesn't give us much time to teach him through play, as you suggested, at home. But we do need time to breathe. What should we do?" So, Amélie, I'm going to answer your question now in English for the benefit of all of the English-speaking families who I know have the same question. I think what's important here is 3 topics today. Number 1, how much time you're spending in the playroom, both at one time and overall with your child. Number 2, what the real purpose of that time is, to address this question of, is it okay if I didn't do anything for 10 minutes? And then third, I want to talk about the concept of the pressure that I know that many parents put on themselves once they start to go in the playroom, which is often why parents feel tired in the playroom. So let's start with time. What I find is I think it's really important to understand that the amount of time you spend in the playroom, both at one time and overall, really depends on you. It's very important that you find the amount of time that matches up to who you are as a person. So I would suggest, much as Amélie you have already done, I would simply start with an amount of time that feels good for you. 25 minutes is a great place to start. And then I would increase that time over time until you feel you found the perfect session length for you. So that might mean you do 25 minutes this week, and next week you do 45 minutes at one time, and the week after that you go for an hour, and then you're up to an hour and a half. I found for myself that I really like playroom sessions to be about 2 hours in length, give or take, because it gives me the amount of time to go in, get things started, and I still have time to actually be in the playroom for a period of time to be with my child, to observe the child I'm with, and to really have fun with them, go with their lead, play my games. It gives us a lot of time to do a variety of things before the session's over. So I found that 2 hours works really well, but I know many families who do about 90 minutes at one time. So really, I think it's important to trust your instinct and find an amount of time that feels really good for you, number 1. In terms of overall time, I think it really depends on what kind of program you want to run. So Amélie, I know that you're just starting out. I know that you're also wondering about whether or not he should be in a center. I think that it's a great thing to start with just doing one session today, and maybe a session tomorrow, maybe a session the day after that. Maybe you aim for 3 to 5 sessions a week as a way to start. If you're thinking that he's going to be in school and you're going to be running a play program at home to help with his social skills, then I think the kind of program I would imagine for a family like that would be that he'd go to school during the day, and then maybe you do an hour and a half to 2 hours each evening, or 3 evenings plus 2 weekend days. So you end up, like I said, doing 5 to 7 sessions a week, and that might be a really wonderful part-time program. Now, if you're thinking that you're going to do this program instead of school, then you might want to think of more of a goal over time of, let's say, up to 20 hours during the week. Because if you imagine he's at school, he gets a lot of break time, a lot of recess time, and school doesn't always capitalize on that one-to-one time. So if you had 20 hours of one-to-one time at home, that would be a wonderful equivalent to him, instead of going to school, being at home with you. I know families, of course, who do 40 hours a week plus. Absolutely, that's possible. And the more time that you do, you might see more changes happening more quickly. But I think it's really important that you don't decide time based on a rule. Remember, step number 3 we're going to talk about today is pressure. And I think having pressure in your playroom actually works against everything else you're trying to do. So it's more important that you find a session time that works for you, and an overall amount of time that also works for you. There is no magic number. There is not a certain amount of time that will help your child change faster. No one's figured out that magic number. It matters that you find time that feels good to you. All right, so point number 2. What is really the purpose of being in the playroom, to address your second question, Amelie, which is, what if we just lay there and don't do anything for 10 minutes? Now here, I think this is a really wonderful question and a really exciting thing to talk about, because the really true purpose of being in your playroom with your child is simply, really truly, to spend wonderful, good quality time with your child. Honestly, that's the point. So if you find that there's a period where you're tired or your child's tired and you're not doing anything, you're just laying there side by side, how wonderful. How wonderful that you honored your own body and took the rest that you needed, and how wonderful that you honored your child's need for a rest as well. I really don't think it's possible to do nothing in the playroom. Honestly, you're there with your child, you are loving your child, and you're passing quality time together. One-to-one, non-distracted. You've left your phone outside. You've turned the TV off. What a gift. I think that's really, really wonderful. So it's important to remember that the purpose of any time you spend, whether it's 15 minutes or 2 hours, the purpose is to spend good quality time together. So if you find that you're not doing something the whole time, good for you. Awesome. Fantastic. Now, the other thing that's important to consider here is that you're not going to be doing something the whole time in terms of teaching your child and educating your child on something new. Your child is going to need breaks. So if you've worked with me previously, or if you've done any approach that's child-centered, you'll know that the concept of following your child into his or her activity. So if Pierre wants to sit down and read a book for a while, he doesn't want to engage with you, well, then that's a time that I would follow his lead. Some people call it joining. You could call it I'm doing what he does. You could simply call it following your child and really honoring what your child needs. But if your child wants to do nothing for 15 minutes looking at a book, then I think you're really doing something by getting your own book and spending some time on your own, giving your child a time to rest. And this helps with that question of tiredness. I find that people who get tired, parents talk to me about being tired with their children, it's often because they're not noticing those break times. So if your child needs some time to disconnect and be on his own and have some chill time by himself without socially engaging with you, then I think it's wonderful for you to have your own rest without having to socially engage with your child. If you spend an hour and a half together, most of my playroom sessions, I'm playing together sometimes with my child. Sometimes I'm just doing nothing by doing something very important and engaging in my own solitary activity when my child has his own break. So if you're tired, it's possible you're not noticing all those breaks that your child is already offering to you. All right, third point, this idea of pressure. it's really important to consider all of the pressure that absolutely you could include in your playroom time. I totally understand. You're there and you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, if Carolina was here, we had such a great conversation the other day. She loves my child. But I'm thinking if she was here, she'd be doing 2 hours and I'm only doing 15 minutes and oh my goodness, I'm not doing enough. And here I am thinking about something else. See, I'm probably not very useful for my child. This is why I need to do it more often. That's it, I'm gonna have to do it every day. You start this conversation inside your head that is completely all about pressure. If you're pressuring yourself that way in your mind, my question to you is, are you really spending time with your child? I don't judge you for that. Of course not. Have I had times where I was completely distracted and putting pressure on myself? Absolutely. We have all been there. But what's important to recognize is that if you're going to spend time with your child, whether it be 15 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 hours, what's important is that you're there and you're there with them. So it really doesn't serve you to think about all the things you should be doing at the same time. So when you start to feel that pressure, I notice that's when parents start to get tired. So Amelie, I don't know if that applies for you, but if you feel any kind of pressure, like you should be teaching or you should be doing more or you should be spending more time, any of those shoulds indicate that it's time for you to do something very important. Say to the pressure, thank you so much for coming. I don't need you here today. You can go outside. And you send the pressure outside the door so that you can focus on your beautiful and amazing child, which is why you're there in the first place. So I hope that these 3 points are going to help you guys with your time in the playroom as well as the quality of your time in the playroom with your children. And just to address the last point of whether or not this Center for Children with Autism is right for you, Amelie, honestly, without observing it more, I don't know specifics on this specific place. But the fact that you're already telling me that you're doubting the efficiency of this place, to me indicates that your intuition is telling you it's not the right place for him. You can do so much at home. I know that you're going to have a wonderful time playing with him and teaching him through all the play you have together. So it sounds to me like your intuition and your doubt is already indicating it's not the right spot, but you're going to have to really trust your intuition on that one. If what you need is time to breathe, like you said, remember that you can have time to breathe by running a program at home. Actually, most of the families I'm working with who have passed the point you're at, they start to look for support and they get 1 or 2 friends or volunteers or helpers to come in a couple times a week and do a session here and there. That is your time to breathe and actually can be much more fulfilling because the people you know who are in the playroom with your child now, with Pierre, you actually know them and you know what they're doing and you know that they're efficient. So you already are 1 step above the center that you're considering. So if you need time to breathe, consider that you might need some support from someone coming into your house as one option. And then of course, if you decide that this center is the best place for Pierre, wonderful choice. I'm certainly not going to say he shouldn't go there, but I think that you can accomplish so much at home that really remember your power and your own capacity to help him, and that bringing in 1 or 2 other people could give you the time you need while still giving Pierre the kind of support and learning that you want him to have. All right, so all of my wonderful English-speaking families, I hope this has been helpful to you, and I want to encourage you, please, to go to my website. You're going to see a link where you can click to go and ask your own question. And that way, every week, I could talk about you and your child. I promise I'll just use your first name so no one else will know who we're talking about. But because I know all of you, I would love, love, love to support you in this way and offer you a question and an answer each week. So I will look forward to your questions in English for next week. Until then, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful time in the playroom. I hope you're having a fantastic time with your children, whether you're spending 5 minutes or 2 hours together. It's wonderful. That gift that you're giving to yourself and your child, pat yourself on the back for it. You're doing a wonderful thing, and I am so, so, so excited to know that you're starting and that you spent this time with me today. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye!